In this video, we illustrate how you can use gradebook data and quiz performance data to test the efficacy of pieces of course content and generate ideas for course improvement. In particular, we will answer these three questions. How can you use course data in the previous semester to improve your course in the next semester? How can I determine which parts of my course are strongly associated with student success or failure? Which questions provide the best opportunity for improvement, meaning empirically shown to be difficult but still reliable? I'm going to use LearnSphere's Tigris workflow tool and gradebook data to identify an assignment that seems to be worth investigating in order to potentially improve that assignment and improve the course. The course gradebook that I'm going to use is the course gradebook from a Psychology MOOC. It is a tab-delimited file, and I'll show it here in Excel first. Most learning management systems are able to export to Excel or tab-delimited. Ask your technical support person for help getting the grading data into the correct tab-delimited format. This is an example of what your exported gradebook data might look like. The first column here is a student identifier. The top row is the different assessments, including quizzes, a few extra credit written assignments, a midterm, and a final exam. The last column is a final grade, which is some weighted composite of the other scores. So the top row is variables, the first column is students, the following columns are assessments, and the last column is a summary score. The last column is optional though. If you don't have a final grade, it can be computed for you, and I'll show that later. Now we're going to use Tigris to analyze this data. You can get to Tigris from LearnSphere.org like this by clicking the Get Started button, or you can go directly to this URL above. Once you log in or create an account, you will get to the workflow homepage. This is where you'll see your own workflows, and you also have access to other people's workflows if they've marked them to be public. We're going to create a new workflow. The list of various components in Tigris is found on the left here. We're going to start our workflow as most others start, just by importing some data. So I'll drag the import component into the workflow, then hit the gear icon to open its settings. I'm going to upload the file from my own computer. Then I'll select the file and upload it. Before running the workflow though, I'm going to go back into that component list, and under Analysis, I'm going to drag the correlation component. I'll connect the gradebook data to the correlation component by dragging from the output node of the import to the input node of the correlation component, connecting them. With all new components, it is important to click on the gear to see what kind of settings need to be set or modified. This gradebook already has a summary column, so I'll set this to be true. If your gradebook doesn't have a summary column, or a final grade as the last column, then select false. I'll click the Save and Run button to get the results of the correlation component. To view the results, I can either double-click on the output node, or I can click on this magnifying glass. Now, if your gradebook data didn't have a summary column as the last column, it'll be computed here down at the bottom. In this correlation matrix, we find the answer to question 2. I can see how well each assessment correlates with the final grade in this bottom row, as well as how the assessments correlate with each other throughout this matrix. We notice that the green highlighted cells are particularly high correlations, while the reds are low. The thresholds for these are found at the top. One interesting pattern is that quizzes leading up to the midterm have very high correlation with it, as you'd expect. What we're interested in this video is which module or assessment is most predictive of the final grade. We see that a few quizzes are highly correlated with the final grade. Interestingly, the midterm is more correlated with the final grade than the final exam is. This cell suggests that students who do well on quiz 9 do well in the class, and students who do poorly on quiz 9 do not do well in the class. So is there something about quiz 9 and the module associated with it that we can consider improving? I have data from the items in quiz 9, so now I'll import it into this workflow and investigate further. I'll import my data from quiz 9 just as I did with the class gradebook. I'll then go into the component list and drag out an assessment component. I'll connect this to my quiz data and make sure I've set the settings correctly. Then I'll run the workflow. The assessment component computes reliability values for the items, a measure of the expected correlation of two items that measure the same construct along with some other useful statistics about the items. Once the workflow is finished running, we can look at the file that has been imported by double-clicking on the output node. The first column is the student identifier, and the last column is the total score for each student on Quiz 9. There are columns for each of the questions or items, with a 1 indicating that the student got the question correct. Let's look at the results of the assessment component by clicking on the magnifying glass. What this table will show you is a sense that the overall quiz is reasonably reliable with a Cronbach's alpha of 0.74. The exclusion analysis below suggests that all of the items are, at least from a psychometrics point of view, contributing to the reliability, such that if we take any one question out, the overall reliability doesn't go up. All of these questions are reasonably reliable, so now, to answer our third question, we will look at the average column. Question 3 and question 7 both have very low averages compared to the other questions. This suggests that these questions are more difficult, yet still reliable because of that Cronbach's alpha score. This suggests that the question contains concepts, skills, knowledge components that students need to grasp to be successful in this course. Using a method of identifying which modules of your course are strongly associated with success, and then drilling down into the individual items of this module, you can use data to drive improvements to your course using LearnSphere.